Hello and welcome to Capacity TV. I'm delighted to be joined today by Michael Wheeler of NTT Communications. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Paul. It's good to be here.
So, Michael, to begin with, back in November, I know you mentioned expansion in Indonesia. Perhaps, since then you could give us an update on further acquisitions or expansion plans for the GIN team.
So we did the rollout in Indonesia last year, as we talked about, and we haven't added any new markets this year so far, but we have a couple different business cases that we're reviewing, one in the US in particular, and then a couple in other parts of the world that we'll be looking at later as the year progresses. We previously have done quite a bit of new market build out, particularly in Europe in the last 2 years, so a little bit is just kind of catching our breath and reassessing where we want to go next and kind of making sure that we have the right elements of the business case from a customer opportunity and a cost structure perspective.
Interestingly, there was an interview with yourself in Capacity Daily at ITW. Within that interview, you talked about 3 very unique propositions to NTT Communications. Perhaps you can just tell us a bit more about what they are.
Our Global IP Network team is a very kind of focused team, and I think that I was responding to the question in relationship to that group. And I think there's 3 value propositions that our group really has a chance to provide to the market. The first one is more holistic. It certainly is the kind of financial stability and significance of NTT as a company. $130 billion a year in revenue, large scale, many hundreds of thousands of employees. It provides us a level of opportunity in some ways that a lot of other smaller companies just quite frankly don't have. Along with that, and maybe even because of that, it allows us to have a scale on a global level that, again, a lot of other companies may be more focused on a given region or even a country level kind of expertise. We really can offer that expertise on a global level. And then I think the third thing is a bit more maybe subjective, but from my point of view, a huge asset in our team and the level of tenure that we have from a focused group of people having worked together for really since the late 1990s and running the majority of the team running the network and building it out over that many years period of time. And I think that expertise is hard to quantify in a spreadsheet or on a P&L, but we certainly get a lot of value out of that and have for many years.
Talking about customers and opportunities, many carriers see OTTs as a potential threat. I know yourself, you think they're more of an opportunity. Perhaps you can, again, elaborate on why you think that is.
I think ultimately, if the internet was only being used for email and there were no applications or no video to see or it wouldn't be all that exciting. A lot of people wouldn't be using it to the level in which they're using it today. And so from my point of view, yeah, we have the opportunity to leverage what those, kind of exciting content providers bring to the table and then, essentially partner with them in relationship to delivering that service over our internet infrastructure, again, regionally, but also globally to users who want to use it. Without that content, without those applications, there just wouldn't be as much happening from an internet point of view. And so, figuring out how we work with those groups and come up with commercial models and technical solutions to those kinds of things is just part of what I think is happening today in the marketplace.
Another big topic of discussion, especially in North America right now, is net neutrality. Perhaps you could tell us about your position on net neutrality, especially working for one of the biggest carriers in the world.
So it ties a bit back to what we were just talking about, that ecosystem of having content and carriers. Ultimately, there's a lot of other pieces in that equation. Net neutrality is a philosophical debate at this point, and there have been some proposed rules, and the first set by the FCC in the United States were kind of shot down through a court, challenge that was made by Verizon. Ultimately, I think that we tend to look at things not just from a U.S.-only perspective, although net neutrality kind of comes out of the U.S. marketplace. There have been some very interesting developments recently in Brazil in regards to their internet bylaws and governance structure. And so as those things happen, I think we are paying attention to those things in various markets around the world. Certainly the United States is an important market, but it's not the only market. And so we try to measure those things and look at what allows us to still be a provider to our customers and also within, work within the context of the regulatory environment that we're in those given countries. So it's by no means a one-dimensional thing, and we just continue to try to make sure we're working within that context of that multilateral kind of environment. I think if we set aside the religion of net neutrality for a little bit and just look at what really we're trying to do is satisfy customers of all different types, consumers, businesses, and work with other people within the business environment to do that. And usually I think from a market's perspective that works itself out. I've certainly been known to be called a capitalist in my history. So in my mind, that's where those things will you have a better chance of working those things out than you do through a lot of regulatory intervention.
So finally, Michael, I know in the past you've talked about 100G. Perhaps again you could talk to us about where you think the industry is on sort of upgrades and utilisation of this, and maybe who the early adopters are.
So 100 gig E is certainly an important thing for us. We've been talking about it for quite a while, really since before the standard was even finalized. So there's multiple pieces to it. We deployed our first 100 gig backbone connections on our network in the US late last year in 2013. And so we are in the process now of doing quite a bit more deployment of those through the course of this year and even into 2015 probably when it's all finished. The secondary piece of that is customers and customer requirements. And today we have a large volume of customers on multi 10 gig E ports in given markets around the world. And there is an economic question in relationship to the capital costs you have in deploying 100 gig versus 10 gig. And so, we've looked at that closely as, many people have in the market, and we're just now getting to the point where that starts to make sense. Coupled with that is the COGS cost component, the network cost that you have to have as part of that deployment. And so as those two things have come now in alignment, we think that the early adopters from a customer point of view are really on the verge of deploying some of those for the first time. We quoted some customer connections at 100 gig level last year for the first time and have done some additional quotes to customers this year. The one reality though is that you give up certain things to move to 100 gig that you have with 10 gig today in relationship to redundancy and resiliency, but you also get some advantages from an operational cost point of view. Managing fewer circuits, fewer interconnections, saves money, and can also be just a less challenging thing to do from a management point of view operationally. So there are benefits, but we really feel like this year will certainly be the year we see some of the first early adopter deployments at customer level, and as we go into 2015, I think you'll see that pick up quite a lot.
And as an organisation, did you make the strategic decision to go from 10 to 100 rather than to 40?
Yes, we did. We did that actually quite a while ago. We'd never deployed any 40 gig capacity on the backbone network. It was kind of a protocol of choice for a while in relationship to undersea cable, but by and large, everyone is mostly going from 10 gig to 100 gig. Similar to what happened in the 2006, 2007 timeframe when people were going from gig E to 10 gig E. Really the same kind of jump in that regard. So we definitely always felt 100 gig was where we would be focused during that transition, and that's been true. There's a lot of benefits you get from link access groups and 10 gig, using 10 gig E's for that, and so you weren't giving up a lot or gaining much to move to 40 gig versus just having 4 by 10 gig. But the jump to 100 is more compelling from an operational perspective.
Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today on Capacity TV. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.